Next up is another school that disappointed, for us at least, is the Ole Miss Rebels. Dawn, we had Ole Miss as a top 5 team in the country entering the year. They were number 6 in the country in the preseason AP poll. They failed to make the college football playoff even with that, though. Still, even after a disappointing 2024, it has been an historic 2 years for Ole Miss over the last 2 years. They've won 21 games across the last 2 years, their most in a 2-year stretch in program history. Now, Ole Miss must replace a ton of stars from last year's squad, including a pair of first-rounders and defensive tackle Walter Nolan and quarterback Jackson Dart. They do have a new quarterback in Austin Simmons, who played a little bit in that Georgia game, led a touchdown drive in that Georgia game, showed some flashes as a redshirt freshman with an 82 PFF grade, and he has an outstanding receiving core to work with. The big question is, will that Ole Miss defense, that really was the best part of their entire team last year, will it take a step back after losing so many stars from last year's squad? But Dawn, Austin Simmons, a brand new quarterback, he's got a great receiving core to throw to.
Yeah, you know what's funny is the first thing is the more, I'll get more on Simmons in a second, but the more I was watching the little bit we've seen of Austin Simmons, and then you look in the portal and you look at all the guys they got. Dejon Stribling from Oklahoma State, who was probably their best player last year. Trey Wallace from Penn State, who was, as much as you hate to admit it, probably their best wide receiver last year. Caleb Odom, Caden Lee staying in the slot, he had a good year last year. Daquan Wright at tight end, Luke Hasz at tight end, 2 guys who give you 2 different dimensions, and you go, they're still going to find a way to score points in Oxford. Absolutely. You've got Lane Kiffin. I think Austin Simmons is really talented, but you look at the weapons. He's got at least 6 legitimate weapons to work with on the outside as long as he's protected. I could see Simmons very quietly with this group of weaponry having a solid statistical year at least. We'll see with some of the other elements of their team if they can win enough SEC games to be at the top of contending there. But this receiving core, they did it. They lost some guys. I mean, you lost, Trey Harris. You lost Jordan Watkins, who was a big piece, Caden Prieskorn, Jackson Dart, your quarterback. This passing game is still going to be pretty darn good. I have faith that Austin Simmons is going to have a good year, especially with the weapons he has around him.
Yeah, my number 4 receiving core in the country, and maybe the best tight end room in college football between Luke Hasz and Daquan Wright. And then, of course, they have really, really good wide receivers, too. And like I mentioned, Stribling, Wallace, and Caleb Odom, too. And Caden Lee come back too. The biggest weakness is a defense that lost many elite pieces. Now, of course, Ole Miss had a 93.3 defensive grade last year, tied with Ohio State for the best in college football. It's kind of crazy to say a Lane Kiffin coach team had arguably the best defense in the country last year, or at least one of them. However, Ole Miss did lose their 10 most valuable defensive players from last year, according to our wins above average metric. That includes 5 players who were taken in the 2025 NFL draft, including a first-round pick in Walter Nolan at D tackle, Prince Lee Monmielen. He's gone from that unit too. Just a ton of stars from that Ole Miss defense that was loaded everywhere, especially in that front 7. All of them are really much gone right now. So it's a kind of question of, okay, will it go back to being a Lane Kiffin coach team where it's great offense, but will the defense really hold them back? Or will they just kind of keep humming along and find the new stars in that defense right now?
Right. That's the big question. Look at the names you're losing. Nolan, right? Chris Paul in the middle, who was so good for them last year, transferring in. Prince Lee Monmielen and Trey Amos at corner was a second-round pick himself. I mean, you're losing absolute stars on one of the best defenses in the country. And at a school not generally known for their defense, they did a great job last year. It's why you feel like last year was a missed opportunity, because that might have been a top 5 or 6 defense in college football last year, and they just found a way to lose a couple of upset games. This is a team that really, you hate to dwell back on it because we're doing a preview of the coming season.
Sure.
They should have made the playoff last year with the talent they had. No, they had really one of the 7 or 8 most talented teams in the country.
If you go back to our 2024 preview for Ole Miss, when we were so high on them saying they're the 4th best team in the country, we said this offense is going to be elite. If we knew that defense would be tied for the highest grade in the country, you and I might have been like, they're going to win the national title.
We might have picked them to win the whole thing. Yeah. I mean, but it's just, but again, it's why you play the games, right? It's why you have a 12-game season that you can't. And they made one mistake.
Can't lose to Kentucky.
They made one mistake early, and they had a chance to bounce back from it. And they even beat Georgia. They finally beat Georgia.
Yeah.
And then the Gator game and everything happened in that. So, look, it feels like a missed opportunity, but got to bounce back. I still think they're going to be able to score points. Defense is one thing, but let's talk about Austin Simmons here, because I really do have faith in this offense, right? And I know we only saw him 34 dropbacks last year, but the little bit that we did see, look, we got a southpaw sophomore coming, but I like what I saw from him last year, right? And you're talking about a kid who's got a strong arm. He's a decent athlete. Maybe a similar-ish athlete, maybe slightly less than Jackson Dart, but if you're talking about Lane Kiffin looking for a guy who can throw the ball vertically from the pocket, I think he's got his guy in Austin Simmons, and I was really impressed. I thought at the time before they lost to Florida, I actually thought the moment of their season was early in the first quarter of the Georgia game when Jackson Dart turns his ankle. Austin Simmons has to come in for a drive, and he leads him down for a touchdown. And from that moment, I'm like, you know what? This kid can lead this offense. Now, Dart came back in when they won the game anyway, but I really think, look, you're talking about a guy with enough arm, functional mobility, good understanding of this system. He's already been in it for 2 years now. I really think this is going to be a quarterback that we look back at the end of the season and go, you know what? He's one of the better ones in the SEC. He's going to put up good numbers with this weaponry that he's got with Stribling and Wallace, especially. I like that those guys can get vertically. So I think for him, there's not enough of a sample for me to get a read on, okay, what is he not good at? What are the weaknesses? Because he only, again, 34 dropbacks. But we'll find out. We're just going to find out. You're playing SEC defenses every week, but I think he's a good fit. I think he's good. I really do. I think this offense is going to have a good year and compete with a lot of really good teams in the SEC. I think Simmons is going to be a big piece.
I don't know what game we were at, but we're in the press box of some game we were at when the Georgia Ole Miss game was going on. And remember, Jackson Dart went down with an injury, and you and I looked at each other like, that's it.
That drive. Had they just beaten Florida and made the playoff, to me, that drive would have been the moment of their season. Because I think Simmons did he go 6 for 6 or something on that drive?
He scored a touchdown.
He went 5 for 6, and they were down 7-0. You're down 7-0, I believe it was at Georgia, and your starting quarterback gets hurt. Panic mode. 10 out of 10, right? Sirens. And he comes in just very calm, leads a drive against Kirby Smart in the Georgia Bowl. And that's really what sparked what should have been a playoff run until they lost to Florida. But that was the moment of their season to me. And I think he's got the composure. And even anytime he's coming in mop-up duty, he's looked solid. So I believe in this offense. I really do. They got a loaded group of weapons. And you could have picked any one of them for this spot here. But I know we both like this guy and the bit that we saw from him from where he's transferred in from.
Yeah, a top 10 tight end, in my opinion, in college football, I believe, or maybe he's my honorable mention. Tight end. Number 10 for me, actually. Luke Hasz coming in from Arkansas. Big fan of this guy. Big reason why I think Ole Miss might have the best tight end room in the country between him and Daquan Wright, who's probably a top 15 tight end in college football too. But Luke Hasz transferred in from Arkansas. 82.3 receiving grade across his first 2 years, 10th among all tight ends in the nation, and 4th among all returning tight ends in college football. A 147.7 passer rating when targeted over the last 2 years, the third best among all tight ends in the country. A really good athlete at 241 pounds, can get down the seam really well. And Dalton, he has yet to drop a pass in his college career so far.
Kind of like a more athletic version of what they just lost in Caden Prieskorn.
A little bit, yeah.
Kind of like that, get up the seams, and I like that he's got a different dynamic than Daquan Wright, who I think is going to get a lot of RPO and after the catch work. Hasz is really good. If you don't know about him yet, check the Arkansas tape. He's going to be good for this team.
Absolutely. But Dalton, really the only kind of defender that really came back to this team, a guy that a lot of other people are really high on, and we still think he's a really good player, is Suni Perkins here.
He is a good player. He's a weird player. He's listed at 6'1" and 210, but he's an edge player, and he's their best returning pass rusher. And look,
it's like a safety size.
There's no denying what he can do off the edge. I think it was 11 sacks last year that he had. I mean, there's no denying the speed. Even they use him sometimes as a quarterback spy against more mobile quarterbacks. Suni Perkins. The one thing I do see about him is when he started to struggle late in the season, it's because teams are just handing the ball off and running right at him, right? And with an edged player that's 6'1", 210, you should be able to do that. But when you talk about a guy who can really rush the passer, and it's weird, even at times he can long arm and kind of use whatever length he does have, right? He's obviously got leverage in a guy that small. So, we've talked a lot about in the past some undersized pass rushers. I don't think anybody epitomizes that more than Suni Perkins, but he is, at the college level, at least a darn good football player and a dangerous one off the edge for him.
What is it with these undersized edge rushers in the SEC named Perkins. Harold Perkins at LSU had the same issue. It was like he's too small to play edge rusher. Suntory Perkins too small to play edge rusher too. But yet they're out there and they're really good pass rushers too. I know Harold Perkins is now playing more off ball, and I think Suntory Perkins might play a little more off ball this year for Ole Miss. Now Chris Paul gone. But it's going to be interesting to see what he could do as a junior, man. Just because he's the build of a safety, but he's playing edge rusher. It's a very weird evaluation for him.
Well, at a certain point, when you're not yet in the NFL, like college, high school, anything like that, an athlete is an athlete.
Yeah.
And so Harold Perkins is a really darn good athlete. So there's obviously...
He's a 5-star coming out, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no question he's a terrific athlete, and he's an excellent pass rusher. It's just that how often can you sustain him being on the field? I mean, he played almost 600 snaps last year, which is a lot. But that's what you're going to get. The tape got shown the second half of last year. Run right at him.
Yeah.
If you see him... audible at the line of scrimmage, run right at him. Just go at him because he's only 210, right? You got to essentially, that's what you have, a linebacker playing off the edge. So dangerous player. Definitely right now, I would say their best pass rusher. It's going to be the question of this Ole Miss defense now that he's like the star of it, right? I mean, they lost so many pieces that do they have enough surrounding him on this defense?
I will say he had an 81.8 coverage grade when he had to play off ball last year.
Oh, he's an athlete.
So he could do it. And we saw Harold Perkins have a really good coverage grade too at linebacker too. So maybe Suntory Perkins will have kind of the same career arc as Harold Perkins. Bottom line time now, Dalton, the win total for them, I believe, is 8.5. Yeah, so 8.5 from FanDuel. Taking the over-under for that, and what do you think for the Ole Miss Rebels? Can this be kind of a playoff contender in 2025, do you think?
I think they need a year. I think they need a reset year. I question their offensive line a bit. Their offensive line was not great last year. And I think when you look at that win total, you go, there are a good number of winnable games. I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe up to 7 games where I go, yeah, they should win. So the win total gets funky when you get to 8.5. But I don't look at them this year as the same level of contender that they were last year. I don't think they're a playoff team unless Simmons comes out and gives us some sort of surprise Heisman level season. 8.5 was the number. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go under on it. I think they need a year to not reset because I think still their offense is going to be good, but retool a little bit. I'm feeling maybe a 7 or 8 win season. The lack of depth on defense and their offensive line I'm still worried about in certain matchups. They'll make a bowl game because I'm seeing a lot of wins in their schedule, certainly enough to make a bowl game. But for this team, for last year's team to go 9-3, even with a couple of errors mixed in, this team I don't think is as good as last year, and I'm going to go with that. And Ole Miss, their out of conference is usually kind of soft, so I'm going to take the under 8.5. I don't think they're matching last year's win total.
I'll go over. I think I'll win 9 games.
That's the one thing is there's 6 or 7 here that are like, yeah, they should still.
Yeah, it's like it's the 33rd hardest schedule in the country, which in the SEC is actually not that hard at all compared to some other schools are facing out there. So you got that going for you. I like what they have some offensively. Yeah, I'll go over 8.5. I think they'll get to 9-3. I don't think it'll be much more than that, though. And listen, yes, last year was a massive missed opportunity for Ole Miss. It really was their first opportunity since like the 1960s to be competing at the top of college football. They missed it last year. 2025 isn't nearly as loaded as last year's team, but there's still enough talent for Lane Kiffin to have a top 25 team in college football going into next year. Maybe a team that's in the playoff race for the first half or so of the season before they kind of maybe lose a couple games and fall out of that race. But I still think Ole Miss will go above 8.5 and go 9-3 next year.